Welcome to the first Dragonlance Saga Gaming Advanced Dungeons & Dragons episode. This is Misham Fluorgreen the 20th. My name is Adam. Dragonlance came out of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, so I thought it would be kind of fun to read the core rules aloud and discuss it with a live audience. So if you're out there live, by all means, grab a drink, grab a cushion, seat you took us down, and if you have a copy, grab an old copy of your player's handbook. And let's sort of just walk through this. What I want to do is read section by section, and then if there's anything to sort of chat about between the sections, to do that. But again, this is all stemming from a desire of mine to revisit Advanced Dungeons & Dragons with the goal of actually like playing it again, right? Like the original Dragonlance modules in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Hey, Michael, thanks for joining live. Appreciate you, man. And so hopefully this will be interesting. And if not, I won't do it again. But I got my fingers crossed. It's going to be some fun. Before I dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and you can support this channel by becoming a patron on Patreon, a member of this YouTube channel, and you can pick up Dragonlance Gaming materials using my affiliate link, and all of those links are in the description below. So let me take a sip of my drink here, and let's dive in. This should be kind of interesting, right? Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Special Reference Work. Player's Handbook, a compiled volume of information for players of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, including character races, classes, and level abilities, spell tables and descriptions, equipment costs, weapons data, and information on adventuring, by Gary Gygax. Illustrations by David C. Sutherland III, D.A. Trampier, and cover by D.A. Trampier. Forward. Players, and more players. That's what comprises the D&D phenomenon. Phenomenal is what it is, as the audience for this, the granddaddy of all role-playing games, continues to expand. D&D players happily come in all shapes and sizes, and even a fair number of women are counted among those who regularly play the game, making Dungeons & Dragons somewhat special in this regard. This widespread appeal cuts across many boundaries of interests and background, which means that D&D players are marked by a wide range of diversity. In fact, one could easily use the analogy that there are as many types of D&D players as there are D&D monsters. After that, draw your own conclusions. There are unquestionably fast players, slow players, clever players, foolish players, cautious players, reckless players, generous players, greedy players, friendly players, and obnoxious players. As diverse as this melange of enthusiasts is, they all seem to share one commonality, a real love for Dungeons & Dragons, and a devotion that few other games can claim. This remarkable loyalty is a great factor in the game's explosion of popularity, and Dungeons & Dragons has become a gaming cult, as avid D&Ders have ceaselessly, quote, spread the gospel, enrolling new players and expanding groups which just seem to grow and grow. If you're reading this, then you're a D&D player, and this book is for you. This is the second release of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons series, and is designed to be a player's book in every respect, giving you all the background you require on the game system, as well as the information you'll need to go adventuring. Although this book does not stand alone in terms of supplying all information needed to undertake a campaign, it will complete the other two parts of the whole, the previously released Monster Manual and the upcoming Dungeon Master's Guide, to provide the entirety of what will be Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, along with a greatly expanded version of gods, demigods, and heroes, which will follow. The sheer bulk of this book may seem considerable, and it is, of course, but there are many things not included. These things such as the details of the combat tables for instance, are those parts of the game that rightly fall outside the realm of player reference and thus are included instead in the more voluminous Dungeon Master's Guide. As the author points out, this bit of the unknown outside of the player's normal reach will make the game much more interesting and challenging. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is a game that is demanding for players and dungeon masters alike, but the reward in terms of enjoyment are vast. There's nothing quite like a successful D&D campaign, and its success is based upon the efforts of all participants. The Dungeon Master is pivotal, of course, but the players are just as important, for they are the primary actors and actresses in the fascinating drama which unfolds before them. For that reason, their outlook and their conduct will greatly affect the flavor and tempo of the campaign. Accordingly, they should do their best to fulfill further the success of the entire undertaking. This is often no more than a matter of simple etiquette, and following a few simple guidelines will suffice to make the game experience more fun for everyone concerned. To wit, 1. Be an organized player. Have the necessary information on your character readily at hand and available to the Dungeon Master. Cooperate with the Dungeon Master and respect his decisions. If you disagree, present your viewpoint with difference to his position as game moderator. Be prepared to accept his decision as final, and remember that not everything in the game will always go your way. 3. Cooperate with the other players and respect their right to participate. Encourage new and novice players by making suggestions and allowing them to make decisions on courses of action rather than dictating their responses. 4. If you are unable to participate in an adventure, give the other players and the DM some concrete guidelines if your character is going to be included in the adventuring group. Be prepared to accept the consequences, good or bad, in any case. 5. Get in the spirit of the game and use your persona to play with a special personality all its own. Interact with the other player characters and non-player characters to give the game campaign a unique flavor and life. Above all, let yourself go and enjoy. Enough of the preliminaries. Let's get on with the game. Let's see now. Where did I stash away all those material components? Mike Carr, TSR Games and Rules Editor, 2 June 1978. So, what do you guys think of the foreword there? I love that stuff. I love notes from the writers, from the contributors, from the authors about how they think about the game, and in turn, how we should, going into it, at least start with a baseline understanding. All right, so Solomon, thank you so much for joining live. Appreciate your interaction in the chat there. Fred, what's going on? Great to see you. You think second edition of the cover of the first edition Player's Handbook was best. I agree with you, Solomon, and that's coming up. I've got the two, well, actually I have 3 of the first edition Player Handbook versions spinning on a loop with the artwork from the first 2, just to, help break up the visual since I'm not on camera. You're 47 and you love playing even alone when your friends were available. That's cool. Yeah, I'm 44, so I'm right there with you, man. You never owned the first one. This is actually, the first one was a gift to me from my one of my good friends when I was in middle school. That was when you were actually shunned if you played this game rather than embraced. Michael. Yeah, that's fair. I'm on a highway to hell. Yeah, for sure. All right, let's keep going. Preface. The whole of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons was a project which involved varying degrees of my thought, imagination, and actual working time over a period of more than a year and 1/2. Because of other demands, the project was perforce set aside for a day or a week or even longer, making it hard to get back to. Knowing that this would be the case when I began, the Monster Manual was selected as the first of the 3 volumes in the advanced game to work on. Hundreds of different creatures lend themselves to segmental treatment. Only after that book was finished did I begin to put the sheaved reams of notes for the players and Dungeon Master books in order, and that only as the bones, tables, charts, and matrices, for rough typing and careful rechecking before a final manuscript was built around them. This latter part of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons project I approached with no small amount of trepidation. After all, the game's major appeal is to those persons with unusually active imagination and superior active intellect, a very demanding audience indeed. Furthermore, a great majority of readers master their own dungeons and are necessarily creative. The most critical audience of all. Authoring these works means that, in a way, I've set myself up as final arbiter of fantasy role-playing in the minds of the majority of D&D adventurers. Well, so be it, I rationalized. Who better than the individual responsible for it all as creator of the fantasy supplement in Chainmail, the progenitor of D&D, and as the first proponent of fantasy gaming and a principal in TSR, the company one thinks of when fantasy games are mentioned, the credit and blame rests ultimately here. Some last authority must be established for a very good reason. There's a need for a certain amount of uniformity from campaign to campaign in D&D. This is not to say that conformity or sameness is desirable. Nobody wishes to have stale campaigns where dungeons, monsters, traps, tricks, and goals are much the same as those encountered in any one of a score of other campaigns. Uniformity means that classes are relatively the same in abilities and approach to solving the problems with which the campaign confronts them. Uniformity means that treasure and experience are near a reasonable mean. Uniformity means that the campaign is neither a giveaway show nor a killer. The rewards are just that, and great risk will produce commensurate rewards. That intelligent play will give characters a fighting chance of survival. No individual can actually dictate the actual operations of a campaign, however, for that is the prerogative of the Dungeon Master, first and foremost, and to the players in the individual campaign thereafter. In like manner, players greatly influence the events of each particular campaign, and they must accept a large portion of blame if it is a poor game, and if the campaign is outstanding, they deserve high praise for helping to shape the game and playing well. So at best, I give you parameters here, and the rest is up to the individuals who are the stuff of D&D is made of. Naturally, every attempt has been made to provide all of the truly essential information necessary for the game, the skeleton and muscle which each DM will flesh out to create the unique campaign. You'll find no pretentious dictums herein, no baseless limits arbitrarily placed on female strength or male charisma, no ponderous combat systems for greater realism. There isn't a hint of a spell point system whose record-keeping would harm the heart of a monomaniacal statistics lover or anything else of this sort. You will find material which enables the Dungeon Master to conduct a campaign which is challenging, where the unexpected is the order of the day, and much of what takes place has meaning and reason with the framework of the game world. It is important to keep in mind that after all is said and done, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is a game. Because it is a game, certain things will seem unrealistic or simply unnecessary or integral to the system. Classes have restrictions in order to give a varied and unique approach to each class when they play, as well as to provide play balance. Races are given advantages or limits, mainly because the whole character of the game would be drastically altered if it were otherwise. Everything in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons system has purpose. Most of what is founded herein is essential to the campaign, and those sections which are not, such as subclasses of characters, psionics, and similar material, are clearly labeled as optional for inclusion. What is here is hopefully presented in as logical a sequence as possible, clearly, understandably, and with as few ambiguities as could be managed. Many readers will want more material. There is a wealth of commercial and fan material available for fulfilling such needs. Similarly, even the most important material herein can be altered and bent to suit the needs of individual campaigns. Where possible, True guidelines have been laid down to provide the barest of frameworks for those areas of the campaigns which should be the most unusual and unique. Read the work, or both works if you're a DM, through and assess for yourself what advanced D&D really is. I am convinced that it does for the old D&D Plus supplements what Greyhawk did for D&D when it first appeared, and then some. I've put into these works what should be the important parts of a superior D&D campaign, cutting out material which actually adds little or nothing to the game, revising the old, and adding and expanding in the essential areas. Special thanks are due to the following persons who contributed to the original game or have been so kind as to give their comments, criticisms, and contributions to this game. Dave Arneson, Peter Aronson, Brian Bloom, Joe Fisher, Ernie Gygax, Tom Holsinger, Timothy Jones, Tim Kask, Jeff Key, Rob Kuntz, Len Lakofka, Alan Lucian, Steve Marsh, Mike Mornard, Doug Schwegman, Dennis Suster, Dave Sutherland, Dave Trampier, Jim Ward, Tom Wham, Skip Williams, and all of the good players and kindly dungeon masters who have taken the time to talk with me at conventions or drop me a line in order to pass on their experiences, suggestions, and ideas. Also, thanks to Judges Guild, whose suggestions have helped with this work and whose products have helped D&D. E. Gary Gygax. Yeah, so how do you guys receive Gary Gygax? And certainly his words there, because he's straight up saying, look, here's a baseline, do what you want. Take the baseline and run with it. Change it if you need. Do you guys require rigid rules to follow by? And this is, in my opinion, why I loved first edition Dungeons & Dragons so much, and I actually carried it on to second edition as well. It's that no matter what, the DM was the final arbiter. But the DM was working in order to entertain and challenge the players. And so it wasn't this weird dictator situation, at best. It was a collaborative effort, if in spirit only. In the spirit of having fun, that is. And so sometimes as a DM, I would flub the roles for the sake of drama, or for this, never like punishing anyone in the course of it, but to heighten the sense of adventure or danger or drama. And then whenever I would flub a roll, I would make sure to sort of try to balance it on the other side in some way. Just, again, to make sure it felt real as part of a narrative, I suppose. Is that the approach that you guys took, or am I way off base here? All right. Pardon. I'm not sure drinking, like sipping on a glass of whiskey was the best liquid to clear my throat when I'm reading. Okay. We'll see. Well, it'll be very clear quickly as my voice just gets grittier and grittier and worse as we go on. Introduction. Even if you're not familiar with fantasy role-playing games in general, and Dungeons & Dragons in particular, you'll find this work, with its companion volumes, Monster Manual and Dungeon Master's Guide, is a complete game system in itself. It will stand alone, and it has been written and edited in order to make the whole as easily understood as possible, without taking anything away from its complexity and completeness. If, on the other hand, you are a veteran adventurer of many swords and sorcery campaign games, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons will prove to be superior to any past offerings in the fantasy role-playing game field. You will find it easy to integrate your existing characters or characters into the new system, and at the same time, the game will be both familiar and different. There are nuances not found in previous efforts. All the necessary information is presented in clear and concise terms in a format which logically follows the flow of play. The characters and races from which the players select are carefully thought out and balanced to give each a distinct and different approach to the challenges posed by the game. Advantages and disadvantages, advancement in level, characteristics, and abilities are all detailed and explained so that selection of a player character type, or the integration of an existing character, can be done with foreknowledge and projection. In a similar vein, the individuals running the campaign games, the Dungeon Master, will have available more data and guidelines upon which to build more interesting and detailed milieu. Clerics and fighters have been strengthened in relation to magic users, although not overly so. Clerics have more and improved spell capability. Fighters are still more effective in combat and have other new advantages as well. Still, magic users are powerful indeed, and they have many new spells. None of these overshadow thieves. All recommended subclasses, druids, paladins, rangers, illusionists, and assassins, as well as the special monk class of character, are included in order to assure as much variety of approach as possible. Non-human races, dwarven, elven, gnome, half-elf, half-orc, and halfling, are likewise included. Each offers some advantages and differences, yet has the distinct disadvantages, just as human characters do. But some readers might still be wondering what fantasy role-playing games are all about, so enough about contents and on to explanations. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is a world. Of course, this world is not complete. It needs organizers and adventurers in order to explore it. It needs you. A fantasy role-playing game is an exercise in imagination and personal creativity. The organizer of the campaign, the Dungeon Master, must use the system to devise an individual and unique world. Into this world of weird monsters, strange peoples, multitudinous states, and fabulous treasures of precious items and powerful magic stride fearless adventurers, you and your fellow players. Inexperienced and of but small power at first, by dint of hard fighting and clever deeds, these adventurers advance in ability to become forces to be reckoned with. High priests or priestesses, lords, wizards, and arch-magi, master thieves. The abilities of each adventurer are fixed, but even such characteristics as strength, intelligence, and wisdom are mutable in a fantasy world by means of group cooperation and individual achievement. An adventure can become even more powerful. Even death loses much of its sting, for often the character can be resurrected or reincarnated, and should that fail, there's always the option to begin again with a new character. Thus, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is, as are most role-playing games, open-ended. There is no winner, no final objective, and the campaign grows and changes as it matures. This new system provides the Dungeon Master with more and better material from which to devise the campaign milieu, and that in turn means a more interesting and imaginative game for the players. A word of advice is in order here regarding this new system. Considerable enjoyment and excitement in early play stems from not knowing exactly what is going on, being uncertain of how a given situation will turn out, not knowing every magic item available and so forth, adds spice to the game. Later, this knowledge simulates actual experience, for the seasoned campaigner will have learned through the gameplay. Under the circumstances, it is strongly urged that players do not purchase or read the Dungeon Master's Guide. Leave discovery of the information therein to actual adventuring, and you will find that the game is even more fun. Some of the details of the campaign milieu, worldly knowledge common to a typical adventurers, will be given to you by your Dungeon Master. Exploration, travel, and adventure in the world will eventually reveal secrets heretofore hidden, and the joy of actually earning them will be well worth the wait. Enjoy the game, and always bear in mind that it is fantasy. Magical worlds have a strange way of differing, but while yours may not be quite the same as the one described here, it is ripe for adventure and plunder. Cleverness and imagination, along with a bit of luck, will always prevail, won't they? So you'll notice after each section, I'm updating the title at the lower third of the screen. This is so after I'm finished with this live stream, Oh, he did totally love that, Solomon. After I'm finished with this live stream, I'm going to put timestamps in the description. So at any future date, if anyone's so interested, they could always refer back to specific sections with just a click, and just to make it a little bit easier, a little bit more functional of a video in the long run. Plus, you'll be able to skip past me blathering on like I am right now. I tell you though, looking at this artwork really reminds me of the old D&D cartoon when I was a kid. That was a lot of fun. Okay. The game. Swords and Sorcery best describes what this game is all about, for those are two key fantasy ingredients. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is a fantasy game of role-playing which relies upon the imagination of participants, for it is certainly make-believe, yet it is so interesting, so challenging, so mind-unleashing, that it comes near reality. As a role-player, you become Falstaff the Fighter. You know how strong, intelligent, wise, healthy, dexterous, and, relatively speaking, how commanding a personality you have. Details as to your appearance, your body proportions, and your history can be produced by you or the Dungeon Master. You act out the game as this character, staying within your God-given abilities, and as molded by your philosophical and moral ethics, called alignment. You interact with your fellow role-players, not as Jim and Bob and Mary, who work at the office together, but as Falstaff the Fighter, Angor the Cleric, and Filmar, the Mistress of Magic. The Dungeon Master will act the parts of everyone else and will present to you a variety of new characters to talk with, drink with, gamble with, adventure with, and often fight with. Each of you will become an artful thespian as time goes by, and you will acquire gold, magic items, and great renown as you become Falstaff the Invincible. This game lets all of your fantasies come true. This is a world where monsters, dragons, good and evil high priests, fierce demons, and even the gods themselves may enter your character's life. Enjoy, for this game is what dreams are made of. The game is ideally for 3 or more adult players. One player must serve as the Dungeon Master, the shaper of the fantasy milieu, the world in which all action will take place. The other participants become adventurers by creating characters to explore the fantastic world and face all its challenges. Monsters, magic, and unnamed menaces. As is typical for most of us in real life, each character begins at the bottom of his or her chosen class or profession. By successfully meeting the challenges posed, they gain experience and move upwards in power, just as actual playing experience really increases playing skill. Imagination, intelligence, problem-solving ability, and memory are all continually exercised by participants in the game. Although this masculine form of appellation is typically used when listing the level titles of the various types of characters, these names can easily be changed to the feminine if desired. This is fantasy. What's in a name? In all but a few cases, sex makes no difference to ability. As with most other role-playing games, this one is not just a single experience contest. It's an ongoing campaign, with each playing session related to the next by results and participant characters who go from episode to episode. As players build the experience level of their characters and go forth seeking ever greater challenges, they must face stronger monsters and more difficult problems of other sorts, and here the Dungeon Master must likewise increase his or her ability and inventiveness. While initial adventuring usually take place in a underworld dungeon setting, play gradually expands to encompass other such dungeons, towns, and city activities, wilderness exploration, and journeys into other dimensions, planes, times, worlds, and so forth. Players will add characters to their initial adventure as the milieu expands so that each might actually have several characters, each involved in some separate and distinct adventure form, busily engaged in the game at the same moment of game time. This allows participation by many players in games which are substantially different from game to game, as dungeon, metropolitan, and outdoor settings are rotated from playing to playing. And perhaps a war between players will be going on, with battles actually fought out on the tabletop with miniature figures. One night, while on the next, characters of these two contending players are helping each other to survive somewhat in a wilderness. Each individual campaign has its own distinct properties and flavor. A good dungeon master will most certainly make each game a surprising challenge for his or her players. Treasure and experience gained must be taken at great risk or by means of utmost cleverness only. If the game is not challenging, if advancement is too speedy, then it becomes staid and boring. Conversely, a game can be too deadly and become just as boring, for who enjoys endlessly developing new characters to march off into oblivion in a single night of dungeon adventuring? Sometimes, however, because of close interaction or whatever other reason, two or more dungeon masters will find that their games are compatible to the extent that participants in these individual campaigns can use the characters created in one to adventure in the others. In such cases, the dungeon masters have created a very interesting world indeed, for their milieu will offer interesting differences and subtle shifts which will pose highly challenging problems for these players. Ultimately, despite the fact that this is a game system created by someone else, the game's viability rests principally with the referee. The dungeon master must design and map out the dungeon, town, city, and world maps. He or she must populate the whole world, create its past history, and even devise some rationale for what transpired and what will probably happen. As players, you help immeasurably by participating, by letting the referee know that you appreciate his or her efforts, and by playing well and in a sportsmanly fashion. Good play inspires better creations to challenge that play. Skilled players always make a point of knowing what they are doing, i.e., they have an objective. They cooperate, particularly at lower levels or at higher ones when they must face some particularly stiff challenge, in order to gain their ends. Superior players will not fight everything they meet, for they realize that wit is as good as weapon as the sword or the spell. When weakened by wounds, or nearly out of spells and vital equipment, a clever party will seek to leave dungeons in order to rearm themselves. He who runs away lives to fight another day. When faced with a difficult situation, skilled players will not attempt endless variations on the same theme. When they find the method of problem-solving fails to work, they begin to devise other possible solutions. Finally, good players will refrain from pointless argument and needless harassment of the dungeon master when such bog the play of the game down into useless talking. Mistakes are possible, but they are better righted through reason and logic, usually at the finish of play of the day. This game is unlike chess in that the rules are not cut and dried. In many places, they are guidelines and suggested methods only. This is part of the attraction of advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and it is integral to the game. Rules not understood should have appropriate questions directed to the publisher. Disputes with the dungeon master are another matter entirely. The referee is the final arbiter of all affairs of his or her campaign. Participants in a campaign have no recourse to the publisher, but they do have ultimate recourse, since the most effective protest is withdrawal from the offending campaign. Each campaign is a specially tailored affair. While it is drawn by the referee upon the outlines of the 3 books which comprise Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, the players add the color and details, so the campaign must ultimately please all participants. It is their unique world. You, the reader, as a member of the campaign community, do not belong if the game seems wrong in any major aspect. Withdraw and begin your own campaign by creating a milieu which suits you and the group which you must form to enjoy the creation. And perhaps you will find that preparation of your own milieu creates a bit more sympathy for the efforts of the offending referee. One of the most important items you must have to play the game is a character record. This can be a specially printed sheet done by TSR and available in pads, or you can simply use a notepad and design your own record sheet for your character if your dungeon master is agreeable, for he or she will usually retain at least a copy of all such records. As information is developed for your character, his or her abilities, race, class, alignment, it must be accurately recorded. All details of the capabilities and possessions of the character must be noted. Where equipment and weapons are carried must be listed. Spells known and spells memorized for an adventure have to be kept track of. A running total of experience points must be maintained. All of these subjects are discussed herein. Ask your DM how records of your character should be kept. Read the rules and commentary, and record the data you develop according to the rules and your campaign referee's instructions in a form suitable to your DM. All in all, this is a game for enjoyment. We are certain that it will provide endless hours of entertainment and excitement. That is the sole purpose for its creation. So enjoy, and may the dice be good to you. All right. I clearly do not have as much space as I thought I did. All right, so that is basically the introduction. At this point, we're going to be diving into the mechanics of creating the player, setting up, what your stats are going to be and the different methods. It's going to get into some kind of more crunchier topics. Oh, yeah. Charlotte, I am sorry. I should totally have Funyuns and Mountain Dew visible. Dang. All right, I'm going to turn on my fan real quick and we'll dive right back in. I should have my desk shot. That would be funny. That's a good point, Solomon. And I kind of want to talk about that just really, really quickly. Because I have had this book for like decades, plural. And I've never actually read every section of it like I'm doing right now. This is literally the first time I've ever done this. So is that normal? Like, did I just skip over stuff to get to the crunchy bits on how to actually play rather than like all the introduction type information? Was I the only one that did that? Can't be, right? Yeah, well, let's get into this. Creating the player character. Each participant in the campaign created by the referee must create one or more game personas. The game persona of each participant is called the player character in order to differentiate it from personas created by the referee called non-player characters. The Dungeon Master is advised to limit player characters to one per participant at commencement of the campaign, though as play progresses, additional player characters may be added in a judicious manner. Each player develops the abilities of his or her character through random number generation by means of dice rolling to determine the basic characteristics of the persona, the abilities. The player then decides what the race the character is, what the character's class is, the alignment of the character, and what the character's name is to be. The character will speak certain languages determined by race, class, and alignment. He or she will have a certain amount of gold pieces to begin with, and these funds will be used to purchase equipment needed for adventuring. Finally, each character begins with a certain number of hit points, as determined by the roll of the die or dice, commensurate with the character's class. Class determines the type of die or dice rolled. All characters begin at first level. All of this is completely explained in the following paragraphs. An explanation of the usages of the term level. The term level has multiple meanings in this game system. Although substitute terminology could have been used in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, common usage of the term level to include multiple meanings is prevalent amongst existing players, so the term has been retained herein. The usages for level are 1. Level as an indication of character power. A player character begins the game at first level, i.e. the lowest possible level for a player character. The higher the level number, the more powerful the character is. 2. Level as used to indicate the depth of the dungeon complex beneath the ground. The first level of a dungeon is the first layer of the underground complex of tunnels, passages, rooms, chambers, and so forth. It is the first level beneath the ground. Beneath the first level is the second. Below that is the third, fourth, fifth, etc. The higher the number, the lower the dungeon level, and the more hazardous its perils. 3. Level as a measure of magic spell difficulty. The magic spells available to some classes of characters are graded by difficulty factor, which incidentally reflects the spell's effectiveness to some extent. First level spells are the basic ones available to beginning characters. They're generally the least powerful spells. Next comes second level spells, then come third level spells, and so on. The highest level of any type of magic spell is 9th level spells, usable only by 18th level magic users. Lesser magic users can possibly employ such spells under certain circumstances, which are explained hereafter, but only at considerable risk. 4. Level as a gauge of a monster's potential threat. Relatively weak creatures, monsters with few hit points, limited or non-existent magical abilities, those which do little damage when attacking, and those which have weak or totally lack venom are grouped together and called first-level monsters. Slightly more powerful creatures are ordered into second level, then comes third, fourth, fifth, and so on, all the way up to 10th level, the highest, which includes the greatest monsters, demon princes, etc. It was initially contemplated to term character power as rank. Spell complexity was to be termed power, and monster strength was to be termed as order. Thus, instead of a 9th level character encountering a 7th level monster on the 8th dungeon level and attacking it with 4th level spell, the terminology would have been a 9th rank character encountered a 7th order monster on the 8th dungeon level and attacked it with a 4th power spell. However, because of existing usage, level is retained throughout with all 4 meanings and is not as confusing as it may now seem. I think that's fair. Because as described right there, that is pretty confusing. It's funny because this is not the first time I've been introduced to this, though to be fair again, I have forgotten a lot of this information. And so rereading this bit just sort of puts me back as my middle school self, with my notepad paper and rolling up characters and imagining victories and heroics I would perform and ultimately get smacked down by my dungeon master because my friend was a dick. It's really kind of what it comes down to. Did you guys, hey, let me ask you this in the chat for all of you watching right now. Did you make your characters based on role, or did you always go in with an idea of the type of character you wanted to play and then roll until you could have that character? I think it's interesting because modern day Dungeons and Dragons, it's very much you choose the character, right? And this old way, it kept it really sort of ethereal. Like, I don't know what I'm going to play. Let's find out what kind of character. And then you become invested after you've sort of unraveled the characteristics of this player that you're going to be adopting. So it's a bit of an adoption process rather than a declarative one, I suppose. I don't know. I think it's an interesting difference in play styles. And certainly as intention of play styles from 1st edition to what's now, 5th? All right, let's get into this. Character abilities. Each and every character has 6 principal characteristics, the character abilities. These abilities are strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, and charisma. See also Appendix 1, psionic ability. The range of these abilities is between 3 and 18. The premise of the game is that each player character is above average, at least in some respects, and has superior potential. Furthermore, it is usually essential to the character's survival to be exceptional, with a rating of 15 or above, in no fewer than 2 ability characteristics. Each ability score is determined by random number generation. The referee has several methods of how the random number generation should be accomplished, suggested to him or her in the Dungeon Master's Guide. The Dungeon Master will inform you as to which method you may use to determine your character's abilities. The principal abilities are detailed as follows. Strength. Strength is a measure of muscle, endurance, and stamina combined. For purposes of relating this ability to some reality, assume that a character with a strength of 3 is able to lift a maximum of 30 pounds of weight above his or her head in a military press, while a character of 18 strength will also be able to press 180 pounds in the same manner. Strength is the forte of fighters, for they must be physically powerful in order to wear armor and wield heavy weapons. Therefore, strength is the major characteristic or prime requisite for fighters, and those fighters with strength of 16 or more gain a bonus of 10% of earned experience, explained later. Furthermore, fighters with an 18 strength are entitled to roll a percentile dice in order to generate a random number between 0, 1 and 0, 100, to determine exceptional strength. Exceptional strength increases hit probability and damage done when attacking, and it also increases the weight that the character is able to carry without penalty for encumbrance, as well as increasing the character's ability to force open doors and similar portals. The tables below give complete information regarding the effects of strength. Note that only fighters are permitted to roll on the exceptional strength section of Strength Table 2, Ability Adjustments. All right, so I'm going to just show you these tables here, rather than read each score and general information and such. I do think it's interesting. I love these little explanations they have. Minimum strength for a dwarf character, minimum strength for a ranger. I like that. And then we have our ability adjustments right here. That's just interesting. I didn't want to have to read all the tables, so I figured I'd give you an opportunity of seeing it if you don't already have a copy of this game, of this book. Notes regarding Strength Table 2. Hit probability adjustments refer to the score generated by dice roll in melee combat. Subtraction from or addition to the number rolled is made according to the table as applicable. A full listing of combat tables appears in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Damage adjustment likewise applies to melee combat. The damage done by scoring a successful hit on an opponent is adjusted downwards or upwards as applicable. Thus, if a hit would normally score 1 to 6 points of damage upon the opponent and the character's strength was only 3, the actual damage done would be reduced by 1 point. But, on the other hand, if the attacker had strength of 18/00, the actual damage done would be adjusted upwards by 6 hit points, and possible damage would jump from 1 to 6 to 7 to 12. Weight allowance is given in number of gold pieces over and above the maximum normally stated for unencumbered movement. See movement. The conversion ratio of gold pieces to pounds of weight is 10 to 1. If a character could normally carry 500 gold pieces without encumbrance, but the character had a strength of 17 instead of the normal 8 to 11 range, 1,000 gold pieces could be carried without incurring movement penalty. Open doors indicates the number of chances out of 6 which the character has of opening a stuck or heavy door on that try. Successive attempts may be made at no penalty with regard to damage to the character attempting to force the door open, but each successful attempt requires time and makes considerable noise. Bend bars, lift gates states the percentage chance the character has of bending normal soft iron bars or of lifting a vertically moving gate, such as a small portcullis barring a passage. The attempt may be made but once, and if the score required is not made, the character will never succeed in the task. Example: A character with 16 strength is trapped in a dead-end passage by a set of iron bars, which drop down from the ceiling when a stone slab is stepped on and triggers the release of the gate. The character first attempts to lift the gate. A roll of 0, 1 to 10 indicates success, but the percentile dice comes up 74, so failure is indicated. The character's next attempt to bend bars in order to squeeze between them, the percentage chance of success is the same as for lifting the gate, and this time a 0-7 is rolled, so the character slips out and is free. Intelligence. Intelligence is quite similar to what is currently known as intelligence quotient, but it also includes mnemonic ability, reasoning, and learning ability outside those measured by the written word. Intelligence dictates the number of languages in which the character is able to converse. Asterisk, non-human characters typically are able to speak more languages than our human characters, but intelligence likewise affects the upper limit of their abilities as well, and there are racial limitations. See character races. Moreover, intelligence is the forte of magic users, for they must be perspicacious in order to correctly understand magic and memorize spells. Therefore, intelligence is a major characteristic of magic users, and those with intelligence of 16 or more gain a bonus of 10% of earned experience. Spells above 4th level cannot be learned by magic users with minimal intelligence, and intelligence similarly dictates how many spells may be known and what level spells may be known, for only the highest intelligence is able to comprehend the mighty magics contained in 9th level spells. The tables below allow ready assimilation of the effects of intelligence on all characters, and with regard to magic users in particular. All right. Wow, a paladin needs a minimum intelligence of 9. I guess it's because they're casting clerical spells, right? All right, that's cool. I love these little illustrations. They're just so great. So great. Notes regarding Intelligence Table 2. Each and every magic user character must employ the table in order to determine which and how many of each group of spells by level he or she can learn. At first, only the first level group of spells are checked. Successive level groups are checked only when the character reaches a level at which the appropriate group of spells is usable by him or her. Thanks for tuning in, Solomon. I appreciate you. Chance to know each listed spell pertains to the percentage chance the character has by reason of his or her intelligence to learn any given spell in the level group. The character may select spells desired in any order he or she wishes. Each spell may be checked only once, percentile dice are rolled, and if the number generated is equal to or less than the percentage chance shown, then the character can learn and thus know that spell. It may be in his or her spellbooks, explained hereafter. Example. A character with an intelligence of 12 desires to know a charm person spell that he finds in a book or scroll. Percentile dice are rolled, but the number generated is 52, so that spell is not understood and cannot be used by the character. See, however, the paragraph below regarding the minimum number of spells knowable. Minimum number of spells per level states the fewest number of spells by level group a magic user can learn. If one complete check through the entire group fails to generate the minimum number applicable according to intelligence score, the character may selectively go back through the group, checking each spell not able to be learned once again. This process continues until the minimum number requirement has been fulfilled. This means then that certain spells, when located, can be learned, while certain other spells can never be learned, and the dice rolls indicate which ones are in each category. Example, the magic user mentioned above who is unable to learn a charm person spell also fails to meet the minimum number of spells he or she can learn. The character then begins again on the list of first level spells, opts to see if this time charm person is available to be learned. Rolls 0-4 and has acquired the ability to learn the spell. If and when the character locates such a spell, he or she will be capable of learning it. Maximum number of spells per level is the obverse of the minimum number which can be known. According to the character's intelligence, this maximum number, which the magic user can possibly have in his or her spellbooks, varies from 6 to an unlimited number. As soon as this maximum is reached, the character may not check any further in the level group. Change in intelligence. If intelligence goes down or up for any reason, and such change is relatively permanent, the magic user must check again as explained above for known spells by level group. Acquisition of heretofore unknown spells. Although the magic user must immediately cease checking to determine if spells are known after the first complete check of each spell in the level group, or immediately thereafter during successive checks when the minimum number of spells which can be known is reached, it is possible to acquire knowledge of additional spells previously unknown, as long as this does not violate the maximum number of spells which can be known. New spells can be gained from captured or otherwise acquired spell books, or from scrolls or of magic spells. In the latter event, the scroll is destroyed in learning and knowing the new spell or spells. This subject is detailed more fully in the section explaining magic users as characters. Wisdom. Wisdom is a composite term for the character's enlightenment, judgment, wile, willpower, and, to a certain extent, intuitiveness. It has a certain effect on saving throws against some magical attack modes. It is of utmost importance to clerics. Their major characteristic, and those with wisdom of 16 or greater, adds 10% to earned experience. Furthermore, clerics with exceptional wisdom, 16 or greater, also gain bonus spells over and above the number they are normally able to use. The two tables which follow detail the information pertaining to the effects of wisdom. So we see, I got to show you the little illustrations too. They're great. He created a banana peel. Or did he create the monkey in order to drop the banana peel? I don't know. And there's the wisdom adjustment for clerics. Okay. Notes regarding Wisdom Table 2. Spell bonus indicates the number of additional spells the cleric is entitled to according to Wisdom ability score. Note that these spells are only available when the cleric is entitled to spells of the applicable level. Bonus spells are cumulative, so a cleric with 14 wisdom is entitled to 2 first-level bonus spells. One with 15 wisdom has 2 first and 1 second-level bonus spells, etc. Chance of spell failure states the percentage chance of failure clerics with low wisdom risk when casting spells. To determine if a spell fails, percentile dice are rolled, and if the number generated is equal to or less than the number shown for failure, the spell is expended and has absolutely no effect whatsoever. For additional information regarding clerics, see the section pertaining to clerics as characters given hereafter. Character classes. Dexterity. Dexterity encompasses a number of physical attributes including hand-eye coordination, agility, reflexes, precision, balance, and speed of movement. A high dexterity indicates superiority in all of the above attributes, while a low dexterity might well indicate that one of these attributes is actually superior, but that the others are very poor. Dexterity affects all characters with regard to initiative in attack, the projection of missiles from hand or other means, and in defensive measures. Dexterity is the major characteristic for the thief class of character, and it affects their professional activities such as picking pockets, opening locks, and so forth accordingly. Thieves with a dexterity ability score of 16 or more gain a bonus of 10% of earned experience. The two tables which follow outline the effects of dexterity on characters. All right, so we've got dexterity right here, and then I think the next page is going to be the second one. So we'll get to that in just a second. So I want to show you this really quick. Notes regarding Dexterity Table 1. Reaction Attack Adjustment is the penalty for both surprise QV situations and missile combat attacks. Defensive adjustment refers to the penalty or bonus applicable to a character's saving throws against certain forms of attack, such as a fireball, lightning bolts, etc., due to dodge ability. It also applies to the character's parrying and or dodging ability in missile or melee combat. In this case, the penalty subtracts from the armor class of the character, making him or her easier to hit, while the bonus adds to the defensive value of the character's armor class, making him or her harder to hit. For example, a character with plate mail and a shield is normally treated as an armor class of 2. If the character has 3 dexterity, there is a +4 penalty, so the armor class changes to 6, 2 + 4. However, if the same character has a dexterity of 18, there is a bonus of -4. So armor class changes from 2 to a -2. 2 plus -4 equals 1, 0, -1, -2. And here's the second dexterity table that was referenced. Notes regarding Dexterity Table 2. All penalty or bonus 4 categories are fully detailed under Character Classes, Thieves. The penalties and bonuses are applied to the base chances of success for each named category. Racial adjustments for dwarves, elves, etc. are additional pluses. Constitution. Constitution is a term which encompasses the character's physique, fitness, health, and resistance. Since Constitution affects the character's hit dice and chances of surviving such great system shocks as being changed by magic spell or resurrected from the dead, it is of considerable importance to all classes. Constitution scores of above a certain number are necessary for becoming certain subclasses of characters. Effects of Constitution are given on the table below. It is of utmost importance to understand that a character's initial Constitution score is also the maximum number of times the character can be raised from the dead or resurrected, and that each such revivification reduces the character's Constitution score by 1. Although a character's Constitution can be restored to its former score, or even raised above this number by magical means, this in no way alters the initial score limitation, nor does such magical change in Constitution restore to the character additional chances for revivification. Thus, if a character has an initial Constitution of 15, he or she can never be brought back to life by a raise dead or resurrection spell more often than 15 times. Note that a Rod of Resurrection is considered the same as a spell of the same sort. The 16th death is final and irrevocable without use of some other magical means, such as a wish. All right, let me show you this table here. Constitution. I don't think I've ever had a character resurrected or raised from the dead more than like twice. And I don't know if that speaks to my not playing the same character for very long, or just not being in a campaign for that long. But I don't know. Did you guys? Did you have multiple character resurrections? Notes regarding Constitution table. Hit point adjustment indicates the subtraction from or addition to each hit die for a character. Hit dice are explained fully under the appropriate heading. Note that subtraction can never reduce any hit die below 1. i.e., if a die is rolled and a 1 comes up, or if a 2 is rolled and the penalty due to Constitution is -2, the die is read as 1 hit point, regardless of subtractions. Note also that the only class of characters which is entitled to bonuses above +2 per hit die is fighters, including the fighter subclasses Paladins and Rangers. Thus, even though a cleric, magic user, or thief has a Constitution of 17 or 18, the additional hit points for each hit die due to superior Constitution is +2. Excuse me. You're right, Andreas. It's yeah, it's pretty thorough. System Shock Survival states the percentage chance the character has of surviving the following forms of magical attacks, or simple application of the magic: aging, petrification, including flesh to stone spell, polymorph and object, polymorph others. Example, the wicked necromancer polymorphs others, his hirelings, into a giant rock with the rather foolish agreement of the changee. The hireling must make a saving throw based on his constitution score using the table above. Assuming he survives, a further saving throw would have to be made if he was again polymorphed or dispelled back to original form. The saving throw must be equal to or less than the percentage shown. Resurrection survival shows the percentage chance the character has of being successfully raised from the dead or resurrected by a cleric. The score of the percentile dice must be equal to or less than the number shown on the table, where the character fails to be revivified and is completely and totally dead forever. Remember that a character can never be raised from the dead or resurrected a total number of times in excess of the character's initial constitution score. Excuse me. Charisma. Charisma is the measure of the character's combined physical attractiveness, persuasiveness, and personal magnetism. A generally non-beautiful character can have a very high charisma due to strong measures of the other two aspects of charisma. It is important to all characters, and it has an effect on dealings with others, principally non-playing characters, mercenary hirelings, prospective retainers, and monsters. It absolutely dictates the total number of henchmen a character is able to retain. It affects loyalty of all hirelings and retainers. It is the key to leadership. The following table expresses the facts regarding charisma scores. Charisma table. I've never really thought about that. Charisma, you could be drop dead ugly and have a high charisma because of the other attributes charisma is applicable to. It's just never really come up in my thought process. Oh, here's another. Sorry. Oh, that's character class. I'm jumping ahead. Notes regarding charisma table. Maximum number of henchmen states the number of non-player characters who will serve as permanent retainers of the player character. It does not affect the number of mercenary soldiers, men-at-arms, servitors, and similar persons in the pay of the character. Loyalty base simply shows the subtraction from or addition to the henchmen's and other servitors' loyalty scores. Reaction adjustment indicates the penalty or bonus due to the character because of charisma in meeting and dealing with persons and creatures encountered. For example, the character might encounter a basically neutral intelligent creature and seek to converse in order to gain some advantage. If the charisma of the character is low, he or she will be working under a handicap which will have to be overcome by generous offers and gifts if a chance of success is hoped for. On the other hand, if the character's charisma score is high, he or she will be in negotiations from a strong starting position due to charm and magnetism. All right, so the next section is character races. Since I've been doing this for an hour right now, I think, and my throat is actually starting to degrade here, I think that's a good stopping point for this first reading. But let me know what you guys think. Is this something you want to see continued? Because case in point, I could just read this to myself. I just figured it might be interesting or entertaining because, to Andrea's point, Gary is verbose. He carries on. Very Hemingway-esque, I think. He's got the gift of gab on paper. So what do you guys think? Would you be interested in returning for a second episode or however many after that it takes to get through the entirety of the Player's Handbook? Let me know either in the chat or in the comments below. And yeah, we can move on to character races next time and sort of dive into this and have fun. There's another side of this that I'm going to be exploring, which is Dungeon Master techniques. And I'm framing it around a playlist called Dungeon Mastering 101. And this is in part in reference to a video I released this past week that got a lot of sort of positive and negative reactions. This video is going to end up, or this playlist is going to be a sort of a reaction to that in how to best help players have a good time and how to help dungeon masters with problematic players, or just how to give them the best tool tools they need in order to have a successful campaign. Making sure everyone is comfortable, everyone's having a good time, and no one stomps away from the table upset. And that is ultimately the point, because again, as was mentioned in a lot of these forewords and introductions, this is just a game, and it's supposed to be fun for everyone involved. And a little education and different perspectives goes a long way into making sure that happens. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, drop me a note. You can always leave a comment, or you can just shoot me an email at info@dragonlance-saga.com. Thank you for tuning in. Of course, Dragonlance Saga, the YouTube channel that you're watching right now, I release 3 Dragonlance specific videos a week and sometimes more, but it will always be at a very bare minimum 3 on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Outside of that, sometimes I'm going to be focusing on the different games that Dragonlance is a part of, whether that's board games, card games, the different role-playing games, and Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is just one of those. And that's why I'm focusing on it in this playlist. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. Ring the bell, and you can support this channel by becoming a patron on Patreon, a member of this YouTube channel, and you can pick up Dragonlance Gaming materials using my affiliate link. All links are in the description below. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Slanjavar.